have their bias, which also affects what they censor as fake or real. Either way, we just have mode of operations. Now, JJ, I was going to say to you that because during the NSAS protests, when they were, a lot of hashtag NSAS and all of that, I think a particular guy, now I can't remember his name, Adamu or something, that called out the CEO of Twitter and saying that he was putting fuel in the protest by what's it called? What was the word he used? I can't remember what he said. But he came at the CEO of Twitter saying that he's inciting. Thank you. That was the word. He was inciting the youth. So whether we like it or not, there are human beings behind these companies like Twitter, Instagram, and the entire social media. So don't you think that if they also have, maybe they bought into the agitations of young people, they would also tend to want to take sides to those people, like what we saw, because people are even accusing, even the same United States, some people are accusing Twitter that they are biased towards Trump, they don't want him to whatever and all of that. So don't you think those kind of things might exist because they are also, first of all, human beings, they are not machines. So don't you think they can also decide to say, I want to take sides with maybe a cause that I believe in?
That's where believability comes in, right? That's where believability comes in. So there are several media organizations in Nigeria, several ones, and they don't have the same level of, there are people that will listen to the news on a media platform and then go to another media platform to confirm if it is true.
True.
There are people like that. There are some Nigerian platforms that if I hear a particular news, I still have to go to a particular platform to go and check if it is true. That's where believability comes in. And I'm sorry to say, anybody who believes the Nigerian government better than they believe Twitter, they have a right to. But I think if you did a regular start, people would ordinarily trust the Twitter platform. Of course, human beings will always be in charge of enforcing the law. Of course, human beings will always make mistakes. Of course, there are no perfect institutions. But we do know there are some climes and some institutions that, by and large, they are always, you always trust that they would follow the path of truth and facts. Except we want to deceive ourselves, we haven't exactly done that here to that point in Nigeria where I can trust the average Nigerian institution to follow the path of truth and fact, especially when government is a party in the matter. The other thing is, this whole thing about what if Twitter was taking sides. Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, several celebrities all around the world were on the path of NSAS. And for obvious reasons, they were taking sides with the people's voice. They were taking sides with the people's rights to protest. So there are certain things that should not be up for conversation. People should have, it's not just enshrined in the Constitution, it's one's fundamental human rights. You have the right to protest. It should not be something that somebody should say I wouldn't even want to have a conversation about, I don't know what you call it, whether Adam or whatever it was. I try to focus on important people and important matters during this particular answer thing. So I really didn't pay attention to this person. But I don't think there should be any debate as to why Twitter would make themselves available and try to support the voice of the people as they were expressing it, or the likes of Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or lawmakers in the UK and people all over the world being on the side of the Nigerian people that came out to say, we don't want to be killed. This is forgetting about even the subject of why they were protesting. Their right to protest is sacrosanct.
True.
It is sacrosanct, and that's what you have to first of all understand and accept, that this is not anybody taking sides. There is no sides when it comes to fundamental human rights. There's only one side. There's no this side or that side.
And that's the side of justice.
They stood with that side. That's before you even start to talk about the subject of the protest.
Because
which was people saying, don't kill us.
Sorry to cut you. Because we have very little time left. If you were to propose something to the government, because do you even think at all some level of regulation should be present? That's the one question. But if you were to propose a more...
There's already regulation.
Yeah, which you have mentioned,
regulation
yes.
Currently exists.
Yeah, which you have mentioned. So if you were to propose something to the government about, how to go about controlling and managing information, what would that superior argument be to say, you know what, this cannot work like you're doing it, but I can propose this and this to you as a government?
Number one, why are you controlling? Why are you controlling? Why should you be controlling? It's not in your hands. Government should put out the information. If misinformation thrives in the absence of information, one, and then secondly, when a government has been known to repeatedly tell lies. And this is not specific to the APC government. This is specific to the Nigerian government through the years. So this is not about APC as an institution or Buhari as a president. This is about the Nigerian government through the years, right? Being arrested. The only thing I hear every day is one protester being arrested here and there. Well, today, Lagos State ordered for over 250 protesters, NSAS protesters, to be released. That's not a sign of good faith. So when next week or next month or next year, people come out to protest and they refuse to go in, you're not going to blame them for refusing to go in, because government, again, as with NSAS, has shown that you should never trust them. When they tell you, go in, we'll do the right thing. These are the things that count. These are the things that make nothing happens in isolation. The reality we face today is they are of the outcomes of the past. They are of the result of the consequences of the actions that we took yesterday. You've told people to go back indoor. You told people that you sort their problems, and all you're doing is just arresting these protesters after they've gone in. And then the police people got killed. People didn't just die during the protest. They got killed. Nobody has been arrested. Nobody is being prosecuted as we speak. How do you expect me to trust that government? How do you expect me to believe that that government would be looking to do the right thing with respect to regulating my voice? I'm sorry, I can't. And every Nigerian should stand up against it. And I should also say, though, that no matter what the government does, you really cannot stop your people from voicing out. You can't. To do that, first of all, you have to by yourself dismantle the democracy, because it is inherent in democracy, including a nascent one like Nigeria. The people must have a voice. They must have the right to express that voice. And social media is just one of those places where they are able to express that voice. And you shouldn't do anything about it, but even if you do, you'll find out that you'll be met not just with resistance, you'll be met with the creativity of the people and their ability to jump over whatever barriers you put in front of them, because the voice of people will always, always, always be expressed.
Yeah. That's an interesting comment. You have some comments?
Yeah, so we have a comment here from Sally who says, in a world where traditional media can obviously be controlled, we need some level of uncontrolled platforms for democratizing information. Social media ensures we have that platform. So I think that's largely in agreement with what you were saying. I think that for me, the question I would ask, because it seems, and it's the same question I ask when I say, what is the plan when we go out to protest? So I agree that you have a voice, and I agree that we can all protest. But what is the plan? Do we intend to protest until February 18, 2023 in terms of getting somewhere in this conversation? So for me, I'm always very solution driven. So if we are at a standstill or at a point where the government says we want to, or we can see that there's a need for a social media regulation, can we not then, whether or not, and I fully agree, we were having a conversation before we went on air about the fact that the problem here isn't necessarily the social media regulation. The problem is a lack of trust between the government and the populace. So when we look at this social media regulation, we don't find a place where there is a huge problem. The only problem that I see is ambiguity that says, how do I define these things that causes, what was the word that was used? I think it was embarrass, like to embarrass the government that was put into the bill. So there are all these things that seem very ambiguous, and it's in this ambiguity that the government is empowered to then use it for their own nefarious, purposes, if you want to call it that. So the question I ask is, how do we, let's just say that the social media bill or social media regulation goes ahead, which it seems like whether or not we all, come out en masse tomorrow, seems like the government is dead set on going ahead. How can we come to some middle ground that says, look, what are we going to do? If you say you must pass this, what voice can we have in that process? I know you say there's no point, but what can we actually do?
There's no middle ground when it comes to expressing my voice as a citizen. There's no middle ground. There's no middle ground. And I don't speak for myself, I speak for the average citizen. There's no middle ground when it comes to your ability to voice to speak your mind as a citizen. There's no middle ground. It's not a negotiation we're not discussing, trying to negotiate with terrorists, whether if they stop killing, you give them 20 years. We're negotiating human rights. We're negotiating free speech. There's no middle ground for that because it's not even negotiable, right? So government can go out of its way to do what it has to do. I'm hoping that the Nigerian criminal justice system will be able to stand up against it when people go to court and say, these are things you just cannot do. But even if the Nigerian criminal justice system doesn't do it, let's not even forget that the internet is not in the control of the Nigerian government. There are several governments that have tried to run the internet to control it. What's happened is that the diaspora stands up strong against them and they embarrass them immensely. And I really don't think that the Nigerian government and the people in the Nigerian government want to put themselves in such a situation where when they travel out of the country, they are dragged by international organizations. They're dragged by all these multilateral organizations and even the Nigerian diaspora, asking them, why are you gagging the voices of the Nigerian people? But I need to say again, there's no middle ground. And then someone mentioned that, are people going to protest to February 2023? I don't know. It's not my decision. I think that there's room for protest and there's room for going to sit down, to plot, to strategize, to know what to do. But I'm not going to tell people, oh, go, don't protest again, whatever. I feel like it's an individual decision. And for those that have been able to form groups when they do these things, also they will sit down and have that conversation. I personally think that there's room for protest where you give voice to an issue, you have that issue amplified and you bring that issue to the fore. And there's a place for now sitting down to ensure that the things that you ask for are now deployed in policies and laws. And sometimes those things don't happen out there on the field. So I don't personally expect that people will continually be out there protesting. That's not my strategy as a person. But I also respect the right of anyone that insists that they want to protest from now till the end of time. It's within their rights. It's just within their rights as citizens of Nigeria and as human beings.
Okay, so this is a comment from Rola Care. She says, we need some bit of control and should have clarity on what control means. We have too many fake news as well as transparent views, but it cannot go on without some form of control. So this person says, I stand by control. That's this person's comment here. And you know, my thoughts on this, or listening to him and listening to everyone who's on this table now, my thoughts on this is that the foundation of it all is what he mentioned, you know, trust in the system. That I think is the foundation. You know why I say this? I say this because I've met some people who have not taken a look at the social media bill. They've not taken a look at the hate speech law either. And they just say, you know what, at this point, what is important is the motive. Why is it coming up now? Why is it coming up amidst so and so things? And it doesn't even matter that, oh, the foundation of this law, or at least speaking of the social media bill, is that it should be false. You know, when you say it should be false, like I said, it means we need to go to court to prove that it should be false. And if it's not false, ordinarily, you know, people shouldn't really feel, you know, uncomfortable with it. But because there's the challenge of trust, of that line between false and true, and finding out what truly is going to be the outcome of it, that's why I find that a lot of people are agitated. And you know, one of the things I think, now this is just a comment, one of the things I think about this is that generally when it comes to passing a law, the voice of the people really matters. And I find that even if this law, even if the government is looking, even if the government is looking and passing this law with good intentions, or, you know, to actually, even if, now, assuming but not conceding, as we usually say, now, assuming that the government is looking to pass this law with good intentions, I find that the people, and we're not in that state, the people are not in that state to receive the law yet. The people are not in the state to trust the institutions yet. And they're saying, let's work with what we already have, because this looks to a lot of people like a winch-hunt process. I think the government is for us. I mean, the National Assembly is for us. There are people, they're representing us. I think these voices of the people, the voice of people, we say is the voice of God. So I think the voice of people really matters.
Okay, so JJ, because we have 1 minute to go, we want to give you the last 1 minute. If you had something to say to the government right now, we know it is not right. I mean, this social media bill, I for one, I'm not here for it at all, but we have to do our job. So, but if you had something to say to the government, what would that be, you know, and what would you also say to the people? Because let's not forget as well that part of what we need to do as a people is to be responsible for what we put out there on social media. Amidst all the NSAS protests and all of that, lessons learned were there were a lot of people that had agenda that spread a lot of fake news amidst all of those things they were mixed up with the truth. So how can you talk to the people, citizens' responsibility, and what would you say to the government? Then we'll wrap up there.
To the government, I would say that ask the Nigerian people, if you don't know, ask them what their problems are. And that will be very, very easy for you to know exactly what to prioritize. And if you do ask them, I can assure you, social media bill will not be on the last on the list of their problems, because it wouldn't even be on the list. They'll talk to you about poverty, they'll talk to you about the educational system, the absence of water, insecurity, maternal mortality, child mortality, power, all of those things. You know, address them. When you address them, you wouldn't even have to bother yourself about social media, because people will start to talk about the fact that their lives are getting better. When you start obsessing about controlling people's voices, people should wonder, why are you obsessing? Is it because you're not doing what you're supposed to do? So government should do what it's supposed to do. As for the people, really and truly, there's always a cost to putting fake news out there, hate speech out there. People have lost their admission on account of the things that they posted on social media. Schools have admitted people, then people have shared the things that those people posted, and they've lost their admission. People have been arrested and prosecuted and sent to jail on account of the things that they posted. So you might have this feeling of anonymity and this feeling of power and freedom because you have access to social media, but there's always a cost. It can cost you legally, it can cost you socially, and it can cost you professionally, and in every other way. People have lost their jobs on account of things that they posted on social media in Nigeria and abroad. So don't even get it twisted. There are costs to misdemeanors and using social media for criminality. And even though we're beginning to have this conversation because of the Nigerian government about some social media bill, the laws already exist, and you better be careful so you don't get caught on the wrong side of the cyber crimes law and associated laws.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think that's a fantastic way to wrap up. Thank you, JJ, for joining us this evening. And we hope the government is listening. We hope we are also listening, because there's the responsibility that we have to hold ourselves accountable. Because social media is such a powerful tool that you also don't want to mess it up. You want to be sure that whatever you're using it for, it is to drive the greater good of Nigerians. That's what I think should be at the back of the minds of every young person on social media. So we continue to push for good things, like he rightly said. There are many problems that we have, and if the government fixes all those problems, we'll not come at you on social media. All right, so please watch a repeat broadcast of this episode tomorrow at 3 p.m. It's been a very insightful conversation, heated a little bit, but good. Keep all the conversations going on all our social media platforms at Wait Show Africa 1 or at Plus TV Africa, as we continue to hear what you're saying. Now, in case you missed today's quote, well, our guest doesn't agree with Tito. But it was not me that said it, was Jay Bayer. It says content is fire and social media is gasoline. All right, so we'll see you live tomorrow at 8 p.m. On Friday. Oh, it's Sunday. Friday, we'll see you Friday at 8 p.m. as we bring another great conversation to your screen. Enjoy your evening.
Bye.
It for upcoming artists to blow in Nigeria.
welcome to Plus Trending. I am Bookie November, your host, saying thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Welcome back. It's tea time on Plus TV Africa.
Practice makes perfect. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
He's a king. He's entitled to marry 100 if he wants to.
On Plus TV Africa News at this hour, Lagos State Attorney General directs release of 253 persons arrested by police due to End SARS protests. On the foreign scene, Ethiopia's Abiy replaces army chief as casualties mount in Tigray conflict. And outside Africa, President Trump says he's just beginning, shows no sign of conceding. Thanks for joining us on News on the Hour on Plus TV Africa. Here are the stories making the headlines. I'm Annetta Felix. A fire-laden tanker has fallen at Festac Link Bridge, spilling its contents. The laden tanker with 33,000 litres of petrol overturned while conveying the content to a destination in Lagos State. After the accident, which left fuel gushing out from the tanker on the road, residents used buckets and kegs to scoop the content. The Director General, Lagos State Emergency Management Agency, Olufemi Okeosanyintolu, in reaction said the transloading of the remaining petrol was ongoing as at the time of filing this report, adding that emergency responders were on ground to prevent a secondary incident. The Lasema DG appealed for calm. Elder statesman Emmanuel Iwuanyanwu has asked President Muhammadu Buhari to restructure the country before leaving office in 2023. He emphasized that there is a great need to restructure Nigeria for proper and peaceful coexistence, even as he advised that presidential position in the country should be rotated among the 3 zones of Nigeria. Iwuanyanwu has also contended that Igbos are not properly accommodated in the scheme of things in Nigeria. He also records that no section of the country has made the type of contributions the Igbos have made. Former Abia State Governor Senator Theodore Oji has called on President Muhammadu Buhari to dialogue with different groups, including the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, to stem increasing agitations and insecurity in the country. Oji, who spoke to reporters ahead of his 70th birthday this week, identified restructuring as a panacea for the manifest marginalization in the country. The Abia Central lawmaker said the Southeast would negotiate with the People's Democratic Party, PDP, to zone its 2023 presidential ticket to the region. The Senate has tasked the Ministry of Finance to work towards reducing the cost of governance. The Senate, while reacting to a request by senior ministry officials to increase allocation for the ministry, especially for the renovation of several of its facilities, says there is a need to reduce the cost of personnel for most agencies. The chairman of the Senate Committee on Finance, Solomon Olamilekan, says Nigeria is in a dire situation as it is experiencing a shortfall in revenue generation.
We have 37 federal fair offices, all in their need of rehabilitation. In particular, sir, you may be aware of Mosaic House in Lagos, where the Office of Accountant General was sited before movement to Abuja. That office is a very large property that can be utilized to generate revenue. It is now being underutilized. In fact, We are grossly underfunded. I am being honest. We are being treated like any other MDA. We know the constraints, but we can do better in terms of our ability to meet the expectations and needs of Nigerian economy and Nigerian people.
Everybody is asking for more, but the maximum that you can provide for capital in 2021 is defined already by the MTEC, and we can't go beyond that. When we issue the budget call circular, we show the details as approved in the MTEC, and we had a distribution of the whole of that 1.4. So when my colleagues talk to me, I will say, okay, information is very important, but so is security, so is agriculture, so is health, so is education. So you tell me where I will move the funds from to provide to. So if one person is doing a complaint, I'll ask them, okay, tell me where I should move from to give. Who is having enough? Nobody has enough. Everybody is making do with the limited resources that we have.
These allocations that everybody is complaining is inadequate is after providing for a deficit of 5 trillion naira that has to be borrowed. So that is the practical reality. The overall budget size is too small, and that's why we keep making the point that the budget, and Mr. President made that point even when he presented the budget. Both yourselves and us needs to focus more on the side of revenues. Okay. Until we get more revenues, nobody is going to get enough.
We have to start looking at possibility of bringing down our budget size to at least start with 60-40. At least to start with. The 72-28% that we have, or 70-30, I think is something that we have to work on. Yes, I agree that our personnel costs take the larger chunk of the cost of governance, but other elements, we have to start looking in that direction, at least 60% cost of governance, 40% cost of providing infrastructure, and that is one strategy we can use to drive this economy.
The All Progressives Congress, APC, says it is set to commence the registration of members across the country. The chairman of the APC Caretaker Committee, Maimala Boni, made this known to newsmen in Abuja as the APC Caretaker executives took delivery of registration materials. Governor Boni says the party will also seek to revalidate and update its membership register.
We just took delivery of the first consignment of the registration materials, which will soon start across the country. We have over 119 polling units across the country, and as you can see, this is the membership register, and we have the personal information slip that goes with the register as well. After taking all the stock, then we will now unveil the dates, the timetable for the registration across the country. And we are going to register, revalidate, and update our existing membership register across the country.
The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, says only the courts can disqualify Governor Godwin Obaseki of Edo State based on the certificate he presented for re-election, noting that certificates presented are regarded as authentic until proven otherwise by the court. The electoral body said it could not investigate the originality and authenticity or otherwise of the disputed certificate which Obaseki presented to the commission for the governorship election because it was beyond its responsibility. The People's Democratic Party, PDP, had admitted that there were noticeable errors in Obaseki's certificate, but explained that it was while filing the forms for the election in 2016 that Obaseki inadvertently and mistakenly wrote 1976 in a portion of the form for the year of the graduation, which year was the year of his admission into the University of Ibadan. The Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Lagos State, Moyosori Onigbajo, has directed the release of 253 persons who were arrested by police following the violence carried out in the state, including burning of public property in the aftermath of the End SARS protest. This is contained in a statement signed on Sunday by the Director of Public Affairs, Ministry of Justice, Kayode Oyekomi. The statement adds that the 253 persons were arrested by the police for criminal offences in connection to the End SARS protest in Lagos. They are to be released immediately for non-disclosure of a prima facie case against them by the police. Joining us live to discuss this is legal practitioner Philip Obuesi. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
What's your take on this gesture shown by the Lagos state government?
Well, I would want to say that it is a positive one, considering the level of mass looting that took place in Lagos across the state. So the Lagos state government, especially Mr. Governor, has shown tremendous goodwill and capacity in terms of national diplomacy, citizens management. A lot of people hold stuff against him, but considering that this number of people were arrested, and a whole lot of them are claiming innocence, a lot of them are claiming that they were not part of the looters, I think the government did well. If the office of the Director of Public Prosecution say that prima facie case is not disclosed against these people, I think it is the best to have them released. So I support that gesture. More so, I have seen government release people who are accused of being die-hard Boko Haram members. They are not only released, they are trained, they are rehabilitated. And so the government should even go a step more beyond releasing them to rehabilitate these people, because a whole lot of these people are extremely poor. A lot of them are homeless. A lot of them don't have any meaningful source of livelihood. So I acknowledge and salute the government, especially the DPP, for having the courage at a time like this to make it public that they can't find any case against these people and to have them released. I salute the government for that. But I want to add that the government should do more by rehabilitating these people, because sending them back into the streets, they will be waiting for another opportunity to wreak additional havoc. So we should do more by having them rehabilitated and integrated into the society, and the society will be best for it.
Now, while we're here yet to hear from the government if, they would rehabilitate them and, execute some of the suggestions you just made now, do you think this gesture, to release these over 200 arrested, protesters will calm the nerves of, the protesters who are planning a comeback?
I would want us to separate, even the government is conscious of the fact that the protesters are different from the hoodlums. They are different from poor citizens that trooped into the streets to wreak havoc on our public infrastructure. The protesters are very, very different. So I don't see any relationship between this mass body of miscreants and poor people, homeless people that we are arrested. You see, these homeless people have been idle for so long, and that riot, when hoodlums were introduced into the system, they used the opportunities to express their anger against the system. So they are different from it has nothing to do with the End SARS protesters. The End SARS protesters are gentlemen. They are responsible members of citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria who wanted change to the policing system that is currently in existence in our country. So that they are released or they are not released has nothing to do, to the best of my knowledge, with the End SARS protesters.
But this appears to be a carrot and stick approach. In one breath, the leaders of the protest accounts are seized, frozen by the CBN, and in another breath, the alleged hoodlums are released. So how effective do you think this carrot and stick approach is?
Again, I will disagree that if the government freezes the accounts of the promoters of the NSAS. It is a different issue, and I think the government is taking a very wrong step with respect to that. That is not how to go about this situation. But the gesture of releasing homeless Nigerians, homeless Lagosians, unemployed, poor people on the street, the gesture of releasing them is government's goodwill that I salute sincerely. So whether I don't see the carrot and stick here, because these two communities are two different communities. The NSAS community, they are a group of, well-to-do, responsible citizens. These other people are the downtrodden of the society. People who use the opportunity of the NSAS, who exploited it to vent their frustration on our public infrastructure. So if government in any way thinks that on the one hand they are freezing the accounts of the NSAS, which is reprehensible, which is totally condemnable, because peaceful protest is integral to democracy. Any government that restricts in any way whatsoever, restricts the rights of the people to protest, that government is not practicing democracy by any means. That government is not practicing democracy. So that is a different issue. I condemn the government for clapping down on the promoters of NSAS. The people that promote the NSAS protesters are insisting on good governance. That is a democratic right. They are insisting on police welfare. That is a democratic right. They are insisting on, improvement on our public infrastructure. They have a right to do so. Government shutting them down, it presupposes the government is not practicing democracy. On the other hand, releasing the downtrodden of this, where would they even keep them? Where would they even keep them when our prisons are already overcrowded? So releasing them is the most important, is the most viable thing to do, the most responsible thing to do. And I salute the governor who has taken that initiative, and the office of the DPP who have taken that initiative. They should, beyond releasing them, rehabilitate them. The NSAS protesters do not need rehabilitation. The NSAS protesters do not in any way need rehabilitation. So we should separate these two issues.
I need to chip in here, Mr. Obesi. I mean, from reports we've seen on social media, people claim that, friends of theirs who went out to protest were arrested. So I do need to strike in that balance that some NSAS protesters were allegedly arrested from reports that, friends and families of these people have put out on social media, just for clarity's sake. And moving on, I hope this act, of releasing these people from the police custody, I hope it doesn't affect the psyche of the police officers who felt that the perpetrators of different crimes ought to have been punished and not released anyway.
Yes, you have a point there, but you need to understand also that the government have extended a very warm hand of fellowship towards the police. Sometime last week, the governor of Lagos State was able to meet with them. The top hierarchy, the Lagos State Police Command, and promises were made, funds were released, scholarships were promised, and so on and so forth. And even some other independent organizations have been reaching out to the Nigerian police. I remember that Citizens Oversight on Police and Security also reached out to the police. Some of the other communities are reaching out to the Nigerian police because at a time like this, they feel a little let down by the institution that they represent, that by the people they tend to safeguard. So we understand the release will to some extent dampen the morals of the police, but at the same time it's an opportunity for us to speak to the Nigerian police that we are with them. They are Nigerian police, they are our people, they are our uncles, our brothers, our sisters, they are part of us, and we recognize their importance to the society. So the message should be to the Nigerian police, not to feel hard done, but to respect the fact that these people who were engaged in this hooliganism, acts of hooliganism, we are just low-level people who use the opportunity to express this disenchantment with the system of Nigeria. So we continue to reach out to the police, the rank and file of the police, and let them know that the issues are beyond prosecuting miscreants and nobodies of the society. The people at the backside of the society. Prosecuting them and having them jailed will not in any way improve police welfare. These are the messages that we should be taking to the police. Having them arrested and incarcerated will not in any way give any improvement to the society. So, but rehabilitating them will help us all have a more decent, more safer, and more sustainable society.
Thank you very much, legal practitioner Philip Obwesi. We're sadly running out of time. Thank you very much for being on the news. National President of Ohanese Youth Council, Igbo Ayaka, has criticized the federal government and the judiciary over the freezing of suspected NSAS promoters' bank account. Igbo Ayaka warned federal government not to embark on witch hunt, which is capable of throwing Nigeria into heavy political anarchy. Igbo Ayaka pointed that it's not only inhuman to freeze one's account, but also undemocratic and unconstitutional to do so without thorough investigation and fair hearing from the alleged NSAS promoters. The news continues shortly after this break.
Honey!
Daddy, please, can I go out with you and Mommy tonight?
Sure thing, sweetie. Get your shoes and we go.
Promise?
You have my word. You know I wouldn't leave without you, my princess.
Stay safe. Maintain social distance. We are Fidelity. We keep our word.
For the latest collection of corporate and casual apparels for men. Call us on 0818-877-5511. Ashers, dress well for less.
In other parts of Africa, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has replaced his army chief as reports of wounded soldiers continue to rise in a 5-day-old conflict in the country's northern Tigray region. Deputy Army Chief Benahu Jula will take over the Ethiopian National Defense Force without giving a reason or specifying the fate of Benahu's predecessor, General Adam Mohammed. The announcement came as a medical official told journalists that nearly 100 government soldiers had been treated for gunshot wounds at a hospital in the northern Amhara region, the latest indication that fighting has been intense. Abiy and military leaders have touted Ethiopian soldiers' successes against forces loyal to the Tigray ruling party. Thousands of protesters in Senegal burned French flags and pictures of President Emmanuel Macron over his defense of the right to satirize religion and depict the Prophet Muhammad in cartoons. Demonstrators in the capital, Dakar, on Saturday also called for a boycott of French goods as anger mounts despite the French leader's attempts to calm the situation. Senegal, with a population of around 95 million, 95% Muslims, is one of many countries to protest. The French president strongly defended secular values last month after the French school teacher Samuel Paty was murdered after he showed his class drawings of the Prophet Muhammad during a class on free speech. Joe Biden began his first full day as president-elect the same way he does nearly every Sunday, heading to church near his home. Biden entered St. Joseph on the Brandywine in Wilmington, Delaware, shortly after the start of 10:30 a.m. Mass. He typically arrives a bit late and leaves a few minutes early, so the presence of Secret Service agents doesn't bother other attendees. It felt like any other Sunday, except for a huge swarm of media cramped near the church entrance, having anticipated Biden's arrival. Biden entered with his daughter, Ashley, and his grandson, Hunter, the son of the president-elect's late son, Bio, a former Delaware Attorney General. President Donald Trump has reiterated his claims of fraud and has called into question the stolen election as a whole. He says his team is just beginning the tabulation stage. He alleged to have seen a number of affidavits that has been voter fraud. Mr. Trump has repeatedly made the claims over recent days, but has yet to give any proof of such fraud. In a series of angry tweets, he wrote, if there is a problem in the system about authentication, that would seriously affect the entire election. Foreign Minister Dominic Raab says U.S. President-elect Joe Biden will have no closer ally or more dependable friend than Britain, expressing excitement to work with the new administration. He said he is very confident from climate change to cooperation on COVID-19 and counterterrorism. There's a huge bedrock of underlying interest and values that binds the two nations very closely.
Joe Biden has talked about doing in foreign policy, he will have no greater ally and no more dependable friend in the United Kingdom. We're the ones that have been unconditional in saying we'll never see any infrastructure put up at the border between the north and the south in Ireland. And we've, of course, listened to the concerns of our American friends. The Democrats feel very vested in the Good Friday Agreement. We understand that. We look back at the work of George Mitchell, Bill Clinton. But I think it's also fair to point out, as I've used those opportunities in Washington to do, that the EU is itself putting pressure on the Good Friday Agreement with the approach it's taken. So I'm sure we'll have a sensible, common sense approach. And actually, when I look at
2021, the FCT minister, while appearing before the Senate Committee on FCT to defend the administration's budget, says about 45,527,118,330 naira has been earmarked for the FCT for 2021. Bello says the FCT will sustain the implementation of fiscal projects in the FCT's satellite towns.
Today's meeting is scheduled basically to deliberate with the Honourable Minister of FCT and all relevant officials of the FCT administration on the provisions in the FCT component of the 2021 National Appropriate
Capital Budget for the fiscal year 2021. The allocation is to sustain the implementation of critical projects both in the federal
of Saturday evening's live final of Little Mix, The Search. The 29-year-old was due to appear alongside her bandmates in the last